Alright, so first for our flexibility assessment, we're going to assess the cervical spine. For this one, I'm going to have Kelly put your feet up here. We're going to have her put her hand under her butt, her right hand. And for this one, we're going to have her rotate her head and flex her neck down to her shoulder. And see if she can get there and touch it, which she's a little bit away from it. And we can also see by looking up here in her neck muscles that it's a little tight. So she could work on some flexibility with that one. Let's have you put that hand under there and look to the other side. Go down. On this one, she gets her chin to her shoulder, and she's not as tight in those neck muscles. This shows some bilateral inconsistency in her flexibility. Alright, for our next flexibility assessment, we're going to do shoulder range of motion. This one's a little bit different from the FMS one. We're going to have Kelly put her hands behind her back like this. So go ahead and show her. And we want to naturally put our hands behind our back, so we don't want any spinal extension, hyperextension there. We want to put it naturally behind our back, as you can see she is. And what we're looking for is, if we look at this first notch on our finger, if we have one of those, that's good flexibility. If you have two or more, that's great flexibility in your shoulder joints. And as we can see right here, she has one of those, so she has good flexibility in this shoulder, so we'll have her do the other side. For this one, she's not so easily reaching and touching fingertips. You can see that she's straining a little bit here in her muscles, which means she's a little bit more inflexible in her left shoulder on that external rotation. So for this, we could do, there's more bilateral inconsistencies, which is natural in the human body. We could do some shoulder mobility, flexibility work to fix that. Alright, for the next flexibility assessment, we're going to test her trunk rotation. Kelly's a cheerleader. Normal trunk rotation is about 60 degrees from side to side. If you play a sport that requires rotation, like lacrosse or tennis or golf, it should be closer to 90. Again, Kelly's a cheerleader, so it's really not a rotational sport. So we're just going to see what she's got. So let's go ahead. So we're going to rotate, and we're going to try not and compensate with anything. Alright, so we can see her hips are forward, her abdomen's forward, so she's really not compensating with anything. Go back into the rotation. She's almost got 90 degrees, and she's non-rotational sport. So she's got pretty good trunk flexibility to the right side, so let's go ahead and swing to the left. And she's got about the same flexibility on this side, so bilaterally there's really no asymmetries for her trunk rotation, and she's got really good trunk rotation. Alright, next for our flexibility assessment, we're going to look at the deep squat. Squatting is very important for functional ability in people. A lot of people don't realize it. I mean, you squat to sit down, stand up, all that stuff. So we're going to have Kelly go down into a deep squat here. So she's going to put it in a 90-degree angle, and she's going to lower it down to her shoulders there. And this is kind of taking off the FMS screen, but I've added a few different things to it to favor her morphologically formed body with her hips and her knees. Kelly's going to have a more comfortable squat with a wider stance and feet out a little bit more because of how she's morphologically formed, and you can tell that by tests on the hips. But so for the deep squat, we want to go below 90 degrees. So Kelly, you can go ahead and squat for us. As you can see, she got well below 90 degrees. Her quads are a little bit tight, as you can see, because it's pulling her hips into an anterior pelvic tilt as she goes down into it. But other than that, she's pretty functional as far as the squat goes. Alright, our next flexibility assessment, we're going to look at the rectus femoris. We're looking at this because Kelly was having some anterior pelvic tilt going into her squat. The rectus femoris is one of the primary causes of this tightness that pulls down the pelvic girdle. This is called an Eli's test. We want to make sure first that she's straight anatomically. So, got a nice line here. We're gonna pull her leg up like this, and for this, we're gonna pull her heel, and ideally we want it within a few inches, if not touching her butt. And as we can see here, she's probably about 6 or 7 inches away. So that means the rectus femoris is really tight. So let's check the other side for any asymmetries. On this one, she gets really close. So that means this one on her right side is a lot more flexible than her left side. We can also palpate and find the PSIS back here. And when I move this leg up, we can actually feel that pelvic girdle push up as I push in, which means it's probably not quite as functional and flexible as we thought. And you can really feel it push up when I push this leg down. So Kelly's got a really tight rectus femoris, and this could be a lot of her anterior pelvic tilt problems, definitely when she's going down into that squat. Alright, for this next flexibility assessment, we're going to continue on the different parts that's affecting her anterior pelvic tilt in the deep squat. This is the Ober test, and it's looking at the TFL, see if that's tight. That's another cause of anterior pelvic tilt, as well as in that deep squat. That's very important for most functional movements that involve stuff like sitting and standing again. So for the Ober test, again, we're testing tightness of the TFL here. We want to find her ASIS and her PSIS right here. And we want to make sure her hips are in line with her body. And we're going to lift this leg up like this. We want to put our arm on the inside to make sure there's not too much flexion, because that can affect the outcome of the test, make it look tighter. And we want to bring it back 5 or 6 degrees, not too much. So we're going to extend that leg 5 or 6 degrees, and then we're going to see if it drops. And we let go. And in her case, it's not dropping. So that means her TFL is also tight, and that's another main cause of that anterior pelvic tilt in the deep squat. Alright, since we've done the squat test and we've tested her anterior quadricep muscles to see her anterior pelvic tilt in the squat, we're also going to check out those posterior hamstrings next. So we're going to do a hamstring assessment for our next flexibility assessment. So Kelly, if you go ahead and touch your toes. Alright, what I'm looking for when she touches her toes is we want her to bend straight at the hips and keep that back flat. As you can see, that curve in her spine right here means she's compromising for tight hamstrings. In this case, it might just be that her hamstrings are tight, but her quadriceps are even tighter, causing that anterior pelvic tilt. We're going to do a laying down one to assess her hamstrings as well, just as a second test. I'm going to put this pipe right under her PSIS. Go ahead and lay down so we can keep that natural lordotic spine. And we're going to make sure she's in line. Straighten that leg out for me. And we're going to lift this leg up. And as you can see, she's kind of struggling into 90 degrees. We would like it to be 90 degrees or higher to say that her hamstrings are nice and flexible. So again, her anterior muscles are probably tighter than her posterior muscles, causing that anterior pelvic tilt, but she also definitely has some tightness in her posterior muscles. Alright, we're going to check that other leg now. Go ahead and straight out. We'll bring it up. And this one actually is a little bit more flexible than the other side, showing an asymmetry from side to side. But she still kind of bends that knee and struggles into the 90 degrees, but she's getting there with this leg, so her left leg is functionally flexible compared to her right leg, which is another asymmetry. For our next flexibility assessment, we're going to be looking at ankle mobility. This is actually a lot more important than some people think, and a lot of people are really tight in their ankle mobility. So we're going to have Kelly take a knee on the floor. We'll look at that left side first. So we're going to start with her foot closer to the door, and we're going to work our way up. So go ahead and move your foot up. So she's going to lean her knee in so it touches the door here. And we'll take a step back with our foot a little bit. What we're looking for here is we want to make sure that heel doesn't come off the ground, and we want about half your foot's length, and the knee touching the door with the heel still on the ground is good ankle mobility. So this is about half her length right here, and she's touching her knee to the door, but as you can see, her foot has slightly raised off the ground. So on this left side, she has okay flexibility in her ankle. It really wouldn't take that much to get her to the good flexibility range. So next we'll look at this right side. Go ahead and tap your knee to the door. Let's back it up a little bit. Let's back it up a little bit. This is about half of her foot length right here. And on this one, she can't quite get her knee to the door, and her heel's starting to come off the ground. So again, that's looking at her bilaterally. You got some asymmetries there, and definitely some flexibility work that needs to be done.